Okay, continuing on part 2 of today's year. We're continuing on Toshma, middle of the page. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines up from the wide lines. Toshma. So we're continuing on. Toshma, Danin, Elu Keneged Elu. These judges, now that there are up to 71 judges, and they've got to come to a conclusion, they argue back and forth with each other until somebody who is on the side, who's been arguing on the obligation side, changes his mind and flips over to the side to be able to find the guy not guilty. Now, 1 second. Ve'im Isa, if what you're saying is true, that you could flip-flop both ways once you come to the final judgment. So leisni nami ibcha. So say the other side. You can argue it until one of the people who is finding him not guilty switches over to guilty. Why do we specifically pick that one of the people who finds him guilty switches to the not guilty side? So the answer is no. It doesn't prove anything. Tana is chus k'mahadar, achov lo mahadar. It's just the Mishnah is trying to speak in a nice way. They just say that hopefully we come to the conclusion that the person who is from the guilty side will flip over to the innocent side. It worked the same way also the other way. It's not to say that that's not allowed, but that's when the Mishnah is only making the point that we argue until somebody changes their mind. We picked the nice way of looking about it. Toshma kamas. To Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina. Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina says, Echa min hatalmidim shezicha umeis. Let's say somebody is one of the students is arguing in favor. I guess he's one of the students. He's actually one of the judges, and he's arguing in favor of the person to keep him alive, and then that guy dies. We consider him as though he's alive, and his vote counts, right? We're going to put another in his place to argue in defense of this person. Now, 1 second, why should that be? How do we record his vote as innocent? Right? Nema ilu hava kayam hadarbe. How do you know that if he wasn't alive, he would have switched? Right? If you're saying Rav says he could have switched, he could have been arguing on the defense side, but then when it came down to the vote, he would have switched his vote. So how come? So hashta miha lo hadarbe. The answer is, well, because right now, at the time that we heard from him, he didn't switch his vote. That's why we're going to leave his vote wherever it was. So they sent from Eretz Yisrael l'divrei Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina motzi mikal Rabbeinu. We're saying that Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina doesn't agree with Rav because Rav seems to imply that you could switch, and Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina seems to imply that we presume he can't switch. So the answer is ein motzi itmar. He says no. The point that they were making is from Eretz Yisrael is they're actually saying no. Even though it sounds like he's arguing, he's not. He's only suggesting that we despite the fact that a person could switch, since the last thing we heard from him was that he was on the Zakai position, we record his vote as Zakai, despite the fact that somebody, if he was alive, he could have switched. It doesn't argue with Rav. So Tashma, we come again. Shnei Sofrei Dayanin Omdim Lifneihan. They brought 2 court secretaries, court stenographers, right? And they stand in the Beis Din, and they stand in front of the Beis Din. Echa min yamin ve'echa min small, one to the right, one to the left. Excuse me. The kosvin divrei hamazakin v'divrei hamechayvin, and they write down. This is what is the logic behind this. These are the people who are saying that the person is on the defense side, and this is their arguments. These are the people who are on the chayiv side, and this is their arguments. So bishlama divrei mechayvin, I understand why you have to write down the opinions of the people who are going to say that the person is chayiv, because lemachar chazutayma achrina, because maybe they'll come tomorrow and they'll have a different explanation. Uboy lema'aved halanas din. And then what's going to happen is, if they change their mind and they come up with a new explanation, we've got to wait another day. Every time you argue a position, you need to have a night for your people to think about it. So if you write down the reason, this is the reason why the person was finding it in chayiv, so great. We slapped on, he comes back the next day, he goes, I thought of a new one. Now he says, what about this idea? Now we got to wait till tomorrow, we'll come back, we'll think about that one, and we'll come back tomorrow. El divrei hamazachin, my taima. Why are you writing down the people who are saying that he's innocent? Well, why do you have to write that before? Lav mishum di'ichazu taima achrina lechova lo mashkichem behu. Isn't the reason why we're writing that down is because we have to record that they're on the innocent side, so that if they switch over and vote in favor of condemning the person, we're not going to listen to him. So no, that's not why. Kedei shelo yomru shnayim tam echad mishnei mikros. The answer is, the reason why we're writing down is because we don't want two judges to come up with the same logic, but from two different psukim, because that's impossible, right? One of the judges has a wrong reasoning if that happens. Why? Because we have a principle. Rav Asi asked Rabbi Yochanan the question. He said, Amru Shnaim Tam Echad Mishnei Mikros. Let's say two individuals, they come up with the same halacha. They said the halacha is like this. They come up with it, but they use two different psukim as their source. Mahu, what would be the halacha? Can you rely and say this judge voted in favor of the person and this judge has voted in favor? So Amar Le, Ein Monin Lahen, you can't count both votes. One of them must be wrong because they can't learn it from two different psukim. Right? Ella echad, right? You only count them as one vote. You count the two people as one vote because one of them is mistaken in their understanding of the pasuk. Minan immediately, how do I know this is true, that you can never have two different psukim teach me the same halacha? So Amar Abaye says, Da'amar Kra, here's the pasuk. Pasuk says like this. Echad davar Elohim, shtayim zu shamati, ki oz le'Elohim. So he says that one thing I heard from Hashem, two things that I heard, because not two things, right? That Hashem only speaks one thing per pasuk, right? That's, I think, how we're interpreting this pasuk. From one pasuk, and that's what it is. We can learn from one pasuk two dinim, but not the other way around. We can't learn one din from two psukim. That's what the pasuk is saying, right? I can learn two things from one pasuk, but not the other way around. Debei Rabbi Yishmael Tana, in Rabbi Yishmael Yeshiva, they learned as follows from the following pasuk: Ukepatish yipotzetz sela, that the Torah is like sparks shooting out from a rock, right? Ma patish zem is chalik l'kamanitzot. So it's just like this one rock, when you hit it, shoots out multiple sparks. Af mikra echad yotzi l'kamatamim. Also, one pasuk can come to give us multiple explanations. So heichi dami tam echad mishnei mikros. Give us an example, since we mentioned this. Give us an example of how there would be an argument between two people over which pasuk we learn something from, and they're trying to learn the exact same thing, so we can't follow both of those opinions. So Rav Zvid said, K'titznan, we learned in a Mishnah. This is, I want to be able to read it properly. Mizbeach Mikadesh Es Haroilo, right? We learn in Maseches Zvachim that the Mizbeach, right, it can elevate and make holy anything which is a korban that's appropriate for it to be a korban. So Rabbi Yeshua says, Kohol Roy Li'ishim, any item which is eligible to be burned on the Mizbeach, im Allah, if it goes up on the Mizbeach, lo yered. Even if it turns out that the korban becomes pasul, once it goes up on the Mizbeach, you don't take it down, you burn it on the Mizbeach, you leave it up there.
Why the Notch Scroll says tered and that one it says a different word for it?
Because I think you are one line ahead of me, right? Im Allah lo yered. Shenamar's pasuk says ha'ola al mokda. If it goes up onto the fire, ma ola shehi reuya liishim. Just like if the ola is burnt, im also lo tered. There's our tered, right? If it goes up, you do not take it down. Av kol shu roy liishim. Anything which is eligible to be burnt on the mizbeach, im Allah. If it goes up on the mizbeach, lo yered. You don't take it down. Rabbi Gamliel says, Kol haroy l'mizbeach, anything which is appropriate to put on the mizbeach, im Allah lo yered, if it goes up, it does not come down. Shnei pasuk says, Hi ha'olah, it is the olah, al mokda, onto the pyre of the mizbeach, al mizbeach. Ma olah shehi reuya legam mizbeach, just like an olah is appropriate for the mizbeach, im also lo tered, once it goes up, it does not come down. Af kol shehu ro'oi l'mizbeach, im Allah lo yered. So now, the tarvaihu mai kimarabu. So what are both of them saying the psukim are telling us? To add, that goes up on the mizbeach, does not come down. Psulin. They're saying that if you have a pasul korban, and it got brought up onto the mizbeach, then you burn it on the mizbeach. You don't take it down, even though it's a pasul korban. We'll see these laws when we get to the halachos of zvachim and things. But just the bottom line is, once it goes up, it doesn't come down. That's the rule, and they're learning the same rule, but they're arguing over which pasuk you learn it from. It's a machlokas. Both can't be right, because they both can't learn the same halacha can't be learned from two different psukim. Mar maisi le mimokda, one learns from the pasuk mokda, or mar maisi le mimizbeach. So v'hahasa miflag pligi. So there, right? There's an argument between Diktani, as it says, the Seifa says, Ein bein divrei Rabbi Gamliel v'divrei Rabbi Yeshua el hadam v'hanesachim. The difference between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua is an argument about the blood and also the wine that gets poured on the Mizbeach, whether that's included as or not. Rabbi Gamliel says, Lo yerdu, because Rabbi Gamliel says those don't go back either. Why? Because he learns it from the pasuk Mizbeach. Anything that goes up on the Mizbeach, blood and wine also go up on the Mizbeach. Rabbi Yeshua Mar yerdu, they do go down. Why? Because they learn it from the pasuk from Mokdah, that which is burned, and these are items that are not burned. So therefore, if they go up in the Mizbeach and then the korban becomes possible, you do take that down. So therefore, there's a practical difference between the two, which pasuk you learn it from. So therefore, this argument is not that they learned the same halacha from two different psukim. Based on the fact they learned it from different psukim, they arrived at a different halacha. So that is not an example. So we'll try again. Ella Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, Kidatanya learner Brisa. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Amar Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, Mitoch Shenemar, since it says in the pasuk Lamed Dalet Amud Beis, Kol Hanodgea b'Mizbeach Yikdash, that anything that touches the Mizbeach, even items that are puzzle, so it becomes holy. Shome'ani bein roi bein she'eno roi. I now know that is the halacha, whether it's something that is appropriate to be brought up for consumption on the Mizbeach, or something that was not originally. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, kivasim, right? It could be like, if I brought up an animal that wasn't supposed to be brought up as a korban, then does it become kodesh now and I bring it up and I keep it or not? So the answer to the pasuk says, kivasim, no, like sheep, meaning, ma kivasim ru'uyin af kol roi. It has to be, in order for the Mizbeach to elevate the item to a level of kedusha by going up on the Mizbeach, it has to be an item that is supposed to be a korban, right? You can't have, a goose, and there's no korbanos that are a goose. So when the goose goes on the Mizbeach, take it down. The Mizbeach doesn't elevate it. But in sheep, right, even if it wasn't appropriate to be brought, once it's up, you got to burn it because the Mizbeach elevates its status. Rabbi Akiva says, Ola. It's compared to an Ola. Ma Ola Re'uya, just like an Ola means a animal that is appropriate to be an Ola. Is an Ola, a offering that's an Ola can be brought up on the Mizbeach. Af kol roi, also anything that's appropriate. Now, v'tarvahu my kamamatu. So what are the both of them coming to tell us that you can't bring up on the Mizbeach? Psule, those items that are puzzle, that are inappropriate for the Mizbeach. So mar maisi lo me kavasim, one is learning it from one pasuk from the word kavasim. Mar maisi le me ola, the other one learns it from the pasuk ola. So now, v'amar Rav Ada bar Ava, ola sa'of, psula ikebeinahu. So therefore, what we're trying to say is that they're both learning the same halacha, they're just learning from two different psukim. That's our good example. Not so, because they come up with a practical halachic ramification difference as a result of the different psukim that they learn from. Because, let's say, if I've got a invalid bird offering, an ola bird offering is the difference. Because man demaisi le mikvasim, the one who learns it from kvasim, from the sheep, kvasim in ava olos ha'oflo, then we're going to say it's got to be like sheep. Birds are not like sheep, so therefore that's not an offering that would be acceptable. So uman demaisi lema ola, the one who's going to learn it from ola, afilo lasof, this is an ola also. It's a bird ola, so therefore it also would be included. Ella, so that didn't work either. We'll try find another one. We're trying to find two. Again, we're trying to find a disagreement where in practice there's no difference between their opinions other than the fact that they learn it from two different psukim. Ella Amar Ravashi says, Kidatanya, we learn a brisa. Dam yechashiv leish hahu. Dam shavach, right? This person who is going to sprinkle blood outside for a korban, outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So he's chayav kares. Okay, so this is going to be a blood. It's going to be considered a blood for him because he poured blood. L'rabos es hazorik. That includes somebody who sprinkles blood outside of the Beis Hamikdash. That he's chayav kares. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yishmael says. Rabbi Akiva Omer o zavach. Or he brings an offering, l'rabos es hazorek. He uses that pasuk in order to include somebody who sprinkles blood. V'tarvaihu my kamarabu. What are both of them coming to tell me? The pasukim are telling me they're coming to say zrika, sprinkling of the blood. Somebody sprinkles blood outside the Beis Hamikdash, you're chayav kares. Mar maisi lo midam yechashev. One person is learning from the pasuk dam yechashev. Or mar maisi me o zevach. One learning it from the pasuk o zevach. But that's not true because they do have a practical ramification between the two opinions. V'amar Rabbi Avo says, Shachat v'zarak ikabeinahu. What if the person does both shchita and sprinkling of the blood? L'diver Rabbi Yishmael, eno chayav ela achas. He's only going to be liable to one kares. Why? Because when he learns it from the pasuk, o zevach, so the word zevach implies a sacrifice, which is part shchita, which includes the shchita and the sprinkling of the blood. So therefore, he considers that to be one action. Shchita and sprinkling of the blood is the one action of bringing the korban. So he's only violated one prohibition. Hence, he's going to bring one korban chatas if he does it b'shogeg. L'divrei Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, chayv shtayim, he'd be liable to two. Why? Because the pasuk says, dam yechashev, that he's learning is a separate prohibition, that there's a separate prohibition of doing shchita and a separate prohibition of doing the sprinkling of the blood. Since he has two separate prohibitions, you're going to bring two separate offerings. So, ha'itmar Allah, so one second, before you suggest that that's a practical difference between the two opinions, we said about that. Amar Rabbi says, Af l'divrei Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, nami yino chayv elachas, even according to Rabbi Akiva, you're only liable to one kares. Why? Damakra, because another pasuk says, Sham ta'ala ulosecha v'sham ta'aseh. So the pasuk says that's where you're going to bring your korban olah, and that's where you shall do it. Arvinhu rachmana lekulahu asiyos. The Torah says all of the actions involved in bringing a korban all amount to the same one avera that you're going to get punished for, one korban if you do them all. Now we've got a separate pasuk that brings them all back together. So that means even Rabbi Akiva, who learns it from a different pasuk, is going to say you're only chayav one. Now we found our example. Both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael both say you're only going to be liable one offering if you shacht and you sprinkle the blood, and yet they learn it from two different psukim. The answer is they both can't be right. It must be that somebody is mistaken in their understanding of the psukim. If we had such a circumstance and it pertained to a Misa case, we'd only count one of their votes. Okay, next. Dine mominus donin by yom. Next thing we said, that when it comes to financial matters, we judge them during the day, but we can complete the court case at night. When it came to capital cases, the judgment could take place during the day, and we had to vote during the day.
Did we learn that we can't do cases at night?
We said we could not start the judgment at night, but the Mishnah says that you can make your final vote at night. So, Minani Mili, where do I know this from? I'm Rabbi Bar Papa. Rabbi Bar Papa says, Damar Kro, the pasuk says, V'shaftu es ha'am, bechol eis, you could judge the nation at any time. Ihachi, if that's true, so, Tchios adin nami, so then why can't I start the case at night? So, Kid Rava, it's like what Rava says. The Rava Rami Ksiv. Rava contrasts the following psukim. It says, V'shaftu es ha'am bechol eis, you can judge the nation at any time. Ksiv, and the pasuk says, V'haya bayom hanchilo es banav, on the day that he casts his inheritance over to his children. Ha ketzad, so how do you justify both psukim? One says it has to be during the day, one says at any time. So the answer is, Yom, the daytime is l'tchilas din, to tell me that that's when you have to start the court case. It has to start during the day. But Laila ligmar din, but at night, that's when you can finish the court case. So that's how we learned our Mishnah. Masnisen delok Rabbi Meir, but our Mishnah does not follow Rabbi Meir's point of view. Tanyas learner brisa. Higher Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir used to say, Matam alomar al pihem yiyah kol riv. On, this is when Yisro tells Moshe to appoint the judges based on what they say, that they're going to answer on all arguments, v'chol nega, and any affliction. V'chima inyan rivim eitzel negoim. What do the two things have to do with each other? One is tsaras, which a Kohen looks at, and one is a court case of money, which a judge looks at. Why are we connecting the two? Elamakish rivim linegoyim. We're comparing the two together. Mandegoyim bar yom, just like a Kohen has to look at afflictions during the daytime, because their appearance changes if you look at it in an appropriate light. Dichsev, as the pasuk says, uvayom heira osbo, during the day he should look at it. Af rivim bayom, so too, when judges look at a court case, they have to be able to judge it during the day. Uman negoyim shelo besumin, and also just like you can't, a Kohen who's blind can't look at a affliction, obviously. Right, he's blind, can't. The pasuk says, "L'chol mera einei hakohen." Right, you're going to show everything to the eyes of the kohen, which we're going to say also. No, that's going to be a mum also. But there are other things a kohen can do who's blind. Right, he could remove worms from the wood. He can do all kinds of other things. He could do some guarding of the Beis Hamikdash, but he cannot perform avoda, and he cannot investigate negoim, even if he's only blind in one eye, because it says einei, the eyes of. Af rivim, so too, when it comes to court cases, shelo b'misumen, you could not use a blind judge, even seemingly blind in one eye. You wouldn't be allowed to. Umakish negoim rivim, and another connection between these afflictions and the court cases. Ma rivim shelo b'krovim, just like court cases cannot be with relatives. Af negoim shelo b'krovim, also you can't go to a kohen who's your relative to judge your leprosy or your tzaras. Ima rivim bishlosha. You might think, well, if a court case needs 3 judges, af negoim bishlosha, also negoim needs 3 judges. Vedinhu. Well, there's a logic here. Mamono b'shlosha gufo lo kol shekain. If his money requires 3 people to judge, so for sure, if it's a case of his body, which is more severe, then for sur we should need 3 judges. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, "V'huva el Aaron a Kohen o el echad." You bring it to Aaron or one of his sons. Pasuk tells us 1 is enough. Halamad shafilu Kohen echad roes and tells us that one Kohen is enough to judge. Hahu samya dehava b'shuv v'sit Rabbi Yochanan. There was once a fellow who was blind in one eye, who was in Rabbi Yochanan's neighborhood. Dehava doin dina, and he was judging court cases. Velo amar le Rabbi Yochanan velo midi. Rabbi Yochanan didn't tell him to stop, right? So hechi avid hachi. How could you do that way? The Hamar Rabbi Yochanan halach stam mishnah. Doesn't Rabbi Yochanan hold the halacha as like a stam mishnah? And Utnan, we have a mishnah that says kol kosher ladun kosher laha'id, that there's anybody who is able to be a judge can be a witness. V'yesh kosher laha'id ve'ein kosher ladun. But there are some people who are a witness who cannot be a judge. Rabbi Yochanan told us la suye suma b'achas me'inov. That is talking about somebody who is blind in one eye. So that somebody who's blind in one eye cannot be a judge, but can be a witness. So therefore that's what the Mishnah says Rabbi Yochanan should be holding. That's the halacha. So how come he didn't stop this older fellow who was blind in one eye from judging? Because Rabbi Yochanan stamach risa ishka. Because there was another plain Mishnah that Rabbi Yochanan found that contradicted that. It says, Dini Malmanos, Donim Bayom, Vigomer Balayla. Our Mishnah says that when it comes to financial cases, we judge it during the day and we conclude them at night. So therefore, we see that we are not comparing judging to cases of Negoim, and therefore, just like we can't learn from the Negoim that you're blind in one eye, you can't do those cases, so therefore you can't judge a court case either. So Rabbi Yochanan holds like our Mishnah. So you've got 2 stam mishnayos. Why is it that Rabbi Yochanan likes this one, but he doesn't like the other one? Maybe the answer is because we know that one stam mishnah goes according to Rabbi Meir, and one goes according to the Chachamim, and he'd prefer to go according to the majority opinion, and so therefore he likes our mishnah better. Or the other thing is, look at the context. This is a mishnah which is talking about court cases. So that's where you're going to put the laws of court cases. There, we were talking about other subjects, and just that we wanted to make we're talking about this parallel language. There are those who are acceptable to this, and if anybody who's acceptable to this is acceptable to this, but not the other way around. And so this came up as another example of it, but it isn't trying to come to teach us the laws in a proper way. Rabbi Meir, my darsh. But what does Rabbi Meir do with the pasuk that says that you can judge the nation at all times? If Rabbi Meir holds that you can't judge at all times, only can judge during the day. Amar Rava says to tell us that you can judge even on a cloudy day. Because we learned in Mishnah, you can't judge the Negoim during many parts of the day. You can't do it when it's the morning time or the afternoon, or inside a house, or on a cloudy day, because a dim nega will look too bright under those lighting conditions. You can't look in the middle of the afternoon either, because then a strong affliction will look weaker under that light. So you can only have to make sure that your lighting is perfect for the nega, according to Rabbi Meir says that. For Rabbi Meir, so hi bayom hanchilo esban of mayav. At least what does Rabbi Meir do with the other pasuk that we said that the daytime is when he's going to inherit his sons. He's going to use it as we learn the following. Rabbi Bar Chanina Kamid Rabbi Yochanan, like Rabbi Bar Chanina taught in front of Rabbi Yochanan, Rav Nachman. During the day that he causes inheritance to go to his children. By Yom atamapil nachlos via tamapil nachlos balayla. You transfer inheritance to your children during the day, not at night. Amar Le, he says, wait a second, what does that mean? El Me'atif, what you're saying is true. Mandashachiv biyamama yartun. If somebody dies during the day, his children inherit him. Yartun le b'nei. But if a person dies at night, lo yartun le b'nei, then his children don't inherit him. Is that what you're trying to say? Dilma din nachlos kamart. What you mean to say is the judgment of court cases involving inheritance is only done during the day. The time is winner brisa v'haisa l'bnei Yisrael lechukas mishpat ora. That it will be to the children of Israel a law and a judgment. Kol parsha kula lios din. Rav Yehuda. 1 second. So the pasuk says, "V'haisel v'nei Yisrael lechukas mishpat." The pasuk says that that this is talking about inheritances. The pasuk says that it will be a law to a law for Bnei Israel, and then it says, "Ora'ah kol haparsha kula lios din." This pasuk comes to tell us that the inheritance, right, is like a set halacha, like Rav Yehuda says. Amar Rav, it says the name of Rav. Amar Yehuda Amar Rav. Shosha shenichnusu levakeres hacholeh. If 3 people go in to visit a sick person, Ratzu kosvin, ratzu osin din. If they want to, they have 2 choices of how they can judge this. They can either be a beis din, in which case they can execute all of his. If he says, I want this to transfer to this person, they can say, we are the beis din and we transfer it. Or they can simply sign his final wishes and be witnesses. Shnayim, but if only 2 go in, kosvin venos and din, then they have to be a witness. They cannot make a court case. From Rav Chisda says, Lo shana b'yom, that is only during the day. That's what we're learning from this pasuk. That only happens during the day. Ava b'layla, but if 3 guys go into listen to this guy and it's nighttime, kosvin venos and din, mishum tehavu lahu edim, they can only go in and they can have to only witness it because they can't be judges because it's at nighttime. Vein eid nasa dayan, and then they can't go back in the morning and say, okay, now we're going to write it down as judges because you can't be a witness and then turn into the court for being your own witnessing. Amar le in hachi kamine says, yes, that's what the pasuk is talking about. Yeah, we'll stop here.
Yeah.
Which man's love to deal with Fiona now?
Oh,